Sertan, well, you never had him, so it's not necessarily a loss, but a lot of people viewed it that way because it looked like money in the bank. He has ties to the area. Of course, he's coming from South Florida in terms of where he played at American Heritage, but had ties, family ties, and it looked like that connection was maybe about a 90% certainty, but the other 10% took hold, and Nick Saban worked his magic late in the recruiting process. But when we look at the 2018 class, it's funny, and you know as well as me what the national coverage looks like because, man, they really focus on that top five. And if you're anywhere other than the top five, especially when you're used to being close to that range, then you're just completely off the radar. Nothing wrong with the top 15 recruiting class because, for one thing, we don't know that it's going to be the 15 best recruiting class. It might turn out to be the third best recruiting class. We have no ideas. Obviously, a lot of talent in tow with the guys that came in 18, and we already touched upon Terrace Marshall, possibly the best receiver in the nation. Just your thoughts about the entire class, who may make an impact immediately.
Yeah, it was not a class up to LSU's normal standards. They've been in that top five pretty consistently throughout this decade, and to drop all the way down to, depending on who you looked at, around that 15 range was definitely an eye opener for LSU fans, and it's the lowest it's been in, I think, since 2002. Of course, 2002 was just a year before LSU won a national championship, which goes to your point. You could be 15 now, but this class could end up looking pretty decent down the line. Yeah, as you said, certainly Terrace Marshall is, and I would say the other receiver, Jamar Chase, both of those guys definitely could make a huge impact as freshmen. And I would look at a third receiver, Keenan Jones, as a guy who could, career-wise, maybe make the biggest impact of all. That guy's a pure athlete who just is a little bit behind developmentally. But so that's three potential real impact guys at receiver. And then, yeah, if you look at on the defensive side of the ball, Kelvin Joseph is the one defensive back that they brought in this year. He fits the mold of, that star potential DB that they keep churning out. So he's a guy to keep your eye on defensively this season. And Dantrez Scott is another name, another guy who may become a star later rather than sooner, but I've heard pretty rave reviews about him, an outside linebacker who can pretty much move a bunch of different places on the field.
Alex, I don't want to take on this project, but I would love if somebody would re-rank the classes. If they could come up with a metric based on like offensive and defensive production, don't know what you would do with the offensive lineman, maybe come up with some kind of game started metric and re-rank the classes 4 or 5 years later. Let us know how they really played out. Again, I don't want to take on that task and go cross-eyed looking at names and numbers, but
I feel like Alabama usually gets a pretty accurate signing day to production percentage, but after that, it does get a little more mysterious.
Absolutely. So talking about Alabama, well, I'm not going to let you go without bringing up the Crimson Tide. And in addition to that, of course, Auburn's in the division. Jimbo Fisher isn't being paid $100 zillion for nothing. He's expected to win. Even Mississippi State's really good. And I know Dan Mullen's gone, but he left them in really good shape. And they did a number on the Tigers last year. So it's the best division in college football, top to bottom. And just your thoughts about where LSU stacks up and what LSU fans expect. I know they expect the best, but they've been knocked down to that second tier for a period of time now. What do they expect?
What they expect is probably not in correlation with reality, at least for this upcoming season. I mean, you're talking about a totally new offense with a totally new quarterback, totally new running back. I gave you the stats about how many years it's been since they've had to replace that. I mean, they're replacing 92% of their rushing production and 93% of their passing production. You just don't, that's not an easy thing to do. The defense is going to keep them competitive this season for sure. I think they're going to take a step back this year, and LSU fans have to try to be patient in realizing this is a very young offense. But if it takes a little, few bumps this year, but continues to grow throughout the year, you have a potentially really good team coming back in 2019. I think that should be the target year, 2019, 2020, for this program really being back on top. But yeah, as you said, the West is going to be rough this year. I really like Mississippi State's hire Joe Moorhead. So that's going to be a tough team. Obviously, Bama's always tough. They have to go to Auburn. We don't know what a Jimbo Fisher Texas A&M team looks like yet. And then LSU's got to go to Florida once more to finally take care of the whole hurricane mess. That won't be easy with Dan Mullen at Florida. And then Georgia is the other crossover game. So, and you open with Miami. I mean, this is going to be a brutal schedule, and I feel like 7-5 is probably a realistic expectation. And that's a big step down for LSU, obviously. But given all these circumstances, I think if you do anything better than that, you've had a pretty decent season considering the circumstances.
That's not going to go over well.
It is not. It is not. But if you get the signing class that they think they're going to get for 2019, you could see a massive rebound from, what could be a step back. But if the Steve Ensminger offense is something nobody's ready to handle in the SEC West, they could easily exceed those expectations. That's just sort of the baseline that I look at.
We're breaking down the Bayou Bengals with Alex Hickey. Please join him on SEC Country, talking LSU football. Of course, we're in the middle of spring practice, and he definitely broke down to the players to look out for with the incoming class of 2018, fifth ranked in the SEC, number 15 overall. Alex, we appreciate you stopping by. You are welcome back anytime.
All right. Thanks for having me.